Mike McCool here in the Royal Examiner studio, and with me today is Steve Foreman. Steve is the Democratic candidate for District 31, House of Delegates.
Right.
We're going to finally get maybe one delegate to cover almost the whole county, right?
Mostly, yeah.
We've all had so many in the past. We've had 3 delegates cover our area. Yeah. I always say, like, we have no delegates, you know.
Well, we're down to 2, but at least that's a little bit less of the population. It's about 80,000 people, so it's give or take. Well, it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah,
actually.
Still a lot.
Pretty big responsibility.
Yeah, it's not just Warren County,
and it's very humbling. I must say it's kind of daunting, but.
You've been a lot of places, haven't you?
I have been all over the place, learned a lot about, seen a lot of places I had no idea were out there.
Isn't that amazing? You get some of these roads back in the county and the areas, and you're thinking, well, I've been all those places. And you go back there, it just keeps going and going and going.
That's why we have to do stuff like mailers and all the digital stuff, because there's just no way you can reach everybody.
You just can't do it.
The reach these days is pretty incredible. You can get to a lot of people.
So you want to give us some highlights of your campaign?
Well, I've been, like I said, been knocking doors for the past probably 4 weeks, along with a host of other people. I've got a lot of people I need to thank when this whole thing's over, because we've had a lot of great volunteers. It's just been amazing. My wife has been huge. She's been doing the financing, all the reporting on this, and it's
people don't realize how much reporting you have to do.
Really don't know.
Yeah, even in a state race like this, there's a lot of reporting.
Absolutely.
Can just imagine doing a national race. It would be unreal.
I can't even imagine what that would be like. There's a lot of strict rules, and which is good. Makes you wonder how higher up so much money can flow without being traced. It's a little disconcerting.
And what's really funny is the dates move around. It's a floating target. You think, well, I just do it once a month. Well, as the time goes, it becomes 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 day. If you spend so much money, you got to do it in so many hours.
It's pretty daunting. As the amounts go up, it gets more exacting, which is probably a good thing.
Sure.
But I'm happy that we're. Last go around, I haven't seen the figures for the latest. It was a real short reporting cycle this last time, but the time before, we were number 7th in the state in donations under $100. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty incredible.
That's a grassroots movement.
That really is. Yeah, it seems like, we've got, and as I go and knock on doors, I have a lot of people thank me for running. And a lot of people appreciate that somebody's out there doing this.
I tell every candidate, I said, you're doing something that the other 99.9% won't do. And you learn a lot, win or lose.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's good to involve a lot of people in these things, regardless of what the issues are and where people stand on particular things, just to be able to drive, it pulls people together, I think, and they see a bigger picture.
And one of my bigger hopes out of this is that we get the next group of people who are, participating a little bit more.
Right.
Now that they'll participate more in the next go around, because it's important for people.
It's so hard to get candidates to run.
It is. Well,
we see that this election, we have so many unopposed.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing.
No, it absolutely isn't.
Competition is good. And we need people to run.
Get those ideas out there. We gotta percolate. It's a stew.
It might surprise you. You might win.
Well, we're cautiously optimistic. We've got a lot of support coming out. So we'll see.
All right.
Very optimistic.
So what are some of the highlights that if elected, what's your plan?
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, probably the biggest issue we're up against, 2 of the biggest issues. One is education. The Senate Democrats wrangled some money out of the surplus just, I guess, in the last month for schools. Our schools have been underfunded for years, even nationally and even in our region. We're underfunded in Virginia. And the Senate's apportioned some money for the schools, and we'll have to see how that parses out, but I hope to be able to have some influence on that. Same with mental health. There was some money set aside for mental health. We all talk about mental health, but nothing ever really happens.
Right.
So now we're hopeful, and it's too soon to see what that's going to happen with that. We haven't really heard too much, but again, I'd like to be able to influence some of that.
It's kind of like I don't want to say mental health is like we call the silent killer or something, because it's I was just reading a highlight in the news about this situation they've had up in Maine, with the shootings. Yeah. And I just glanced at this part of the story, and it said, that the law enforcement had already been in contact or had an occasion like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
That.
And it was that's a mental problem.
I saw that.
Their hands are just tied. They're just not any... Yeah. Our Leos are not mental health experts.
Well, for a long time, it's kind of been pushed to the side, and I think it's starting to come back into prominence. People are actually thinking about it. They're not, we're not ashamed of it like we used to be. And the same thing with drugs and alcohol addiction. It's a medical issue. It's not a moral issue.
Sure.
So that's part of the changes that are taking place. So I want to hopefully have some influence on that. Again, with the schools, we need to make sure that the thing. I've talked to a lot of retired teachers since I've been knocking doors, and a lot of people say that it's so much harder these days. A lot of that's a pandemic, but I think a lot of that will work out. I think the pandemic disrupted everything. I think it's going to take a while to settle down. But even before that, teaching was becoming harder. Students had less attention span, possibly, and a lot of kids. Well, I know when I was going to school, if my parents heard from the administration at school, I was in pretty deep trouble.
It don't matter whether you were wrong or right.
Right or wrong, yeah. And now that's kind of shifted. Now the teachers and the administrators are seen as at fault. And I don't think that's appropriate. Of course, it's case by case, but I think that's the trend that we're seeing now, and that's kind of what I'm hearing from retired teachers. So I think that's a problem that we need to look at.
I think it's an overall respect for authority is just kind of gone down the tank here.
Well, when you think about it, in the last century, we've gone from 3 news channels to multiple news channels.
300.
Yeah, and now there's no filter, there's no standards on that anymore.
Right.
So,
it's a shame that we've gone that way.
It is.
But it takes up to each one of us to make a change. You can't wait for somebody else to do something. Well, we got to change in our own family and our own activities and things we have to do.
You're right. Make it work at home. And
so if you had to pick one thing that you learned in this election, what do you think it is?
Well, that's a tough one. I've come across.
I don't think I should have run.
No, it's actually been a really rewarding experience. It's been really good to go out and meet people on one-on-one like this and hear from them. Probably the most rewarding thing I'm hearing is just, as I mentioned before, thanks for running. People it kind of gets put on the back burner. People don't think about it.
Right.
But it's important that we as we discussed, we've got to stand up. We've got to be counted. We've got to be participants in this. And that's a big part of what's missing now.
Yeah. It's a shame, but it's the reality. But again, I think we can, like say, each of us can. The old saying, see something, say something. Well, we're kind of along that same line. We see the problem. Let's do something about it. Even if you think it can only just affect you and your family, it's just a cumulative effect.
And that just reinforces it. It starts at the local levels. But another thing that I'm really interested in is kind of holding the line. I'm afraid that we're going to retrench on some of the rights that we've won here in Virginia. We mentioned gun violence earlier. We have a few common sense laws in place right now. I think we need to go a little bit deeper, but I think there's a real possibility that if the legislature turns red, that some of those will be rolled back, and I think that'll be a mistake.
And a lot of these things are mental health issues. I mean,
it is, but when you look at it, we're not any less mentally healthy than other countries.
That's true.
There's got to be something in there that's that we can do that's unique to our country. That's the elephant in the room, isn't it?
It is. But you eat it one bite at a time. So you got to chip away at these things.
True.
So what else? You got a big cheat sheet there. So what else?
Oh, that's just good for my memory. The other thing is women's reproductive rights. Mm-hmm. I think that's another thing that'll be chipped away at if the legislature goes red. Again, I think the whole issue is not nearly as black and white as some people would like to make it. It's what we're finding in a lot of the states that have rolled back the rights. Their doctors are becoming frustrated because there's no clear guidelines. Women are going untreated because doctors are afraid to do what needs to be done. And I think that would be a huge mistake if we rolled it back here in Virginia. We got to be a bulwark for rights.
It also ties in with what you mentioned as the schools. There's no set guidelines. They kind of like float around a little bit. And I think that's people, the old example is you build a fence around a playground, the kids will play right up to the edge. But if you don't have a fence, they play in the middle. And so people want boundaries. They want to just know where they're at. I think that's a situation we need to work on.
We've already got a doctor shortage in this country. And driving doctors out, same thing with school teachers, making their profession harder, something that's so essential, is a real mistake. Yeah. So I'm afraid that's what we'll do with the reproductive freedom.
It'll just take individuals like yourself to stand up and...
Well, I hope to be able to make a difference.
Well, we appreciate your running. I think it's great.
Thank you.
The more the merrier, so to speak. But I think again, it's a great civic duty, and if nothing else, win or lose, you still will make a difference. I think in some people's lives, and I think that's a good thing.
Good.
Any closing remarks you want to make?
Well, one thing that I wanted to mention, I'm always very concerned about is the environment. I think we got a lot of issues with that. Youngkin wants to roll back some protections that are in place. He decided to do that unilaterally, and now it's in the courts because it was a bipartisan law that was passed. There's a regional greenhouse gas initiative was passed, and it helps curb greenhouse gas emissions. The idea that we aren't in crisis and we shouldn't do anything about it to me is ridiculous. There's also an issue with invasive plants in this country or in this state. Well,
we see it right here in front row. The bamboo has gone crazy.
Yeah, we see it, and unfortunately, there's no restriction. So a nursery can sell invasive plants, but they have to warn people about it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, but it's costing agriculture $1 billion a year, roughly estimated. And there's no way to estimate what it does to the natural world. There's no way to.
Some of these plants, like we're aware of what bamboo does, but there's a lot of other plants we could look at and not know it was an invasive plant, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, the state did that. What they bring in this kudzu or whatever it's called.
Yeah, right.
Remember they brought it in to fix one problem, and it did.
Yeah.
But it created 3 others.
And as the climate warms, it's going to start coming our way more. I remember I drove to Florida. It's been a while, but I was just amazed to see how much it had taken over down there.
It will do it.
So that's an issue we need to look at. The other thing that came to my attention recently was that our state parks are really underfunded. I saw a statistic that said that spending $1 at the state parks from the state generates $15 in revenue for the surrounding community. So in other words, if you bring people in, give them a good experience, they're going to stick around, they're going to spend their money in the community. So I think that's something we should be looking at. I think that'd be good.
We should know that right here with the park the way it is. We see we got to put up traffic signs to keep people, the traffic moving. I always thought that was strange. I said, why don't we detour them through downtown and the long way around so they have to see our whole thing?
Yeah, that would be something if we could do that. But
it'd be creative.
Yeah.
But we get millions of people come.
Yeah, it's huge here. It's absolutely huge here. Yeah. We do need to figure out how to make more of the tourism and enhance it and bring more people and somehow manage it.
It's a work. Yeah. It's a work.
Yeah. So, and other things along those lines that the state can do is, I think child care is a problem. I think health care is a problem. We need to get more affordable health care and child care both because they're really huge for working families. Yeah. Working families, wages are starting to go up a little bit now, and I think that's a good sign. And we need to be able to boost them out so that people have time to spend with their kids, and that probably bears a little bit on the earlier thing we were talking about with not having time to spend with your kids and make sure that
makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think so. So,
well, Election Day will be here before you know it.
It will be. And I guess the overarching thing I'd like to say is that it kind of ties in with the whole spending funding from the state on state parks and school and everything else. It's that Republicans see that as a burden when we spend money on these things. To Republicans, it's a burden. But to Democrats, it's seen as an opportunity because we realize that there's a payback on that, like with the state parks, like with pre-K schooling. in the long run, it may not pay off, in 5 years, but in the long run, it's going to pay off.
Right. We got to look at our ROI, our return on our investment.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. So, anyway, I wanted to mention. One thing I need to say: Friday night there at On Cue at 6:00, there's Vote Library Bingo Bash. Everybody is welcome. The candidates who are in favor of the library are going to be there.
Oh, that'd be good. Sure.
So,
that's this Friday.
That's this Friday.
That's the 3rd, isn't it? That's the 3rd. I think that's the 3rd.
I think it is. Everything's kind of running together right now, but I think that's right.
All right. At On Cue.
One other thing, if I can, I brought a quote maybe for you.
Okay.
We are all Americans together, and we must not forget that the common good is our common interest and our individual responsibility. And it's a guy I know that you're not in favor of, but I thought that was a really good quote.
From who?
It's from Jimmy Carter.
Oh,
and he was he's a really good man.
People don't believe it. I said, I voted for Jimmy Carter, one of the first presidential elections. I said, I was a little disappointed in not Jimmy Carter, but the people he brought with him.
The way it turned out, it could have been done better. He's probably been one of the most.
But you can see even now, he's turned out to be
a rational guy and
very humanitarian.
What he's done with his time since then. So
a good example. Maybe we should live our lives that way.
Yeah,
in service to others.
Well, they say we get the politicians we deserve.
I tell that all the time to people. I said we don't get what we want; we get what we deserve. So.
I think we got to, and it's up to the individual voters to, you got to make that choice. Don't just vote like you've always done. You have to look individually at the people that are running and make your choice as the best you can with the best information you have.
It's funny. I see signs around town where the people have a Republican, a Democrat, an independent sign in their yard. So people are doing that. They're looking at not just necessarily voting a ticket, maybe in a national election, but in a local election, you pick it out to individuals. So.
Well, that's why I'm trying to get out here. I mean, I think a lot of people don't really know what my opponent is standing for, but I'm willing to stand and talk at a door for half an hour with somebody if it helps them make up a decision, make their decision. And it's good for me to see what people are thinking. It helps me sharpen my thoughts. Sure. So I think it's important that we get all the information out there.
Sure.
Unfortunately, some folks don't interview, but
yes,
it would be good.
Some won't do that.
Yeah.
We'll see. But all candidates have been invited.
I understand,
and we want, of course, I tell people I want everyone to win, and they do in one way or another. They may not win the vote, but they do win, and it's good for each individual to do it. I think it's a great thing, and I try to be fair and balanced and let people. Give their platform, and hopefully the Royal Examiner has done that this election cycle.
You guys have been great with publicizing this. It's a real public service. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, like I said, we want all the candidates to come, and quite a few have.
Yeah,
and again, we've covered the forums and different things like that. So if you don't know who you're going to vote for, I'm going to say it's your own fault, right?
Yeah. I think the information's out there if you just look for it a little bit.
All right. So. Well, what we're going to do, we'll put Steve's link to his website. If you want to find out more information about Steve, you can click that link and check that out. But remember, Election Day is November 7th. That's next Tuesday.
A week from today.
It's a week from today, and early voting is
voting is all this weekend Saturday.
Right.
So I think it goes till 5 on Saturday.
Right.
So
that's
plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, there's no excuse not to vote nowadays.
Yeah.
We have this election season.
Yep. A lot of people I talk to are absentee balloting. I think it started maybe with the pandemic.
Right.
People are starting to do that as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No excuse.
No excuse. That's
excuse. Again, appreciate it, Steve, and all the things that you've been doing for us over the years. This is just not something new for you. You've been active in our.
I've been trying to get an opinion out there, get different ideas out there. So
again, we appreciate it so much. Reminder to everyone: please vote no later than November 7th.
That's
all
it.
Right. Thank you.
You have a week.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.